Happy Friday the 13th, everybody. And speaking of Friday the 13th, Friday the 13th, the movie franchise, doesn't make sense. Not in the casual way people excuse with, it's just a slasher, don't think about it. I mean, it genuinely, structurally, fundamentally does not make sense. Jason drowns as a child, yet he grows up unseen in the woods. He never goes home. His mother spends her entire life avenging him as if he's dead. And then, when the killing finally begins, the man doing it looks different from movie to movie. Sometimes wildly different, even when the films take place days or hours apart. I've never been able to accept that as one guy. So here's my theory. It's ugly, it's uncomfortable, but it's the only version of Friday the 13th that makes any sense. Let's start with the one thing that has to be true. Jason Voorhees drowned as a child. Jason is dead. If he survived the lake, everything collapses. Pamela wouldn't spend her life mourning him, she wouldn't go on a killing spree, she wouldn't speak of him as a lost boy whose death must be avenged. Her grief only works if Jason truly died. So, Jason drowned, and he never came back, and he never will, which means everything that follows is not Jason. My theory is this. Pamela Voorhees had 3 sons, triplets. Jason, deformed, vulnerable, and the one who drowned. But he wasn't the only child. There were 2 others, hidden, kept far from polite society. Let's call them Mark and Cain. All 3 were born with deformities, inbred, which would be the only reason I could think of why all 3 would be so deformed. All 3 were kept out of sight, and all 3 were raised by a woman slowly unraveling, isolated, ashamed, and increasingly unhinged. When Jason drowned, Pamela didn't just lose a son, she lost the last piece of herself holding everything together. In the original Friday the 13th, Pamela Voorhees is the killer. Not possessed, though seemingly hearing voices from beyond the grave, but just a woman who decided that the world would pay for what it took from her. She never mentions her other 2 sons. She never would. They are secrets, buried things, living reminders of a life that went wrong. When Pamela is killed, whatever fragile structure kept those secrets contained collapses, and the violence spills outward. The killer in part 2 is not Jason. He is feral, bearded, living in the woods, wearing a sack over his face like a man who never learned how to exist in the world. This is Mark. Mark didn't rise from the lake. He was already there, shaped by isolation, grief, and a mother who taught him only one thing, that Crystal Lake must punish those who trespass. After Pamela's death, Mark takes up her crusade. He builds a shrine. He kills in her name. And at the end of part 2, Mark is killed, off-screen. We can possibly assume that he bled to death from that shoulder wound after Ginny plunged that machete into his shoulder. But either way, since he never shows up again, he's dead. He was killed off-screen. That chapter closes. But here's the problem no one can explain. Part 3 takes place the day after Part 2, and suddenly, the killer is drastically different. Bald, clean-shaven, different clothes, different physical presence. There is no believable way this is the same man. And then the movie makes its biggest mistake, or its biggest confession. Chris's flashback. Chris reveals she was attacked a year earlier. And the man who attacked her looks exactly like the killer in Part 3. Not like Mark, not like the woodsman from literally just yesterday, but like this new figure. which means Mark was not her attacker. This is Cain. Cain is bigger, stronger, more dangerous. He isn't feral like Mark. He doesn't cling to shrines or symbols. He doesn't need to explain himself, and he doesn't know that anyone calls him Jason. That name isn't something Cain chose. It's something the town chose for him. After Pamela's murders, Crystal Lake already had a story. A drowned boy, a curse, a warning parents whispered to their children. So when Mark killed, they called it Jason. And when Cain kept killing, they kept calling it Jason. The legend didn't belong to the killer. It belonged to the fear. This explains everything. Why the killer's appearance shifts, why his intelligence fluctuates, why his behavior evolves. Because the killers in Part 2 and 3 are two different people. Part 2 is Mark, and everything from 3 on, except Part 5 of course, is Cain. By the time the series goes on, when bodies pile up, when logic dissolves, when death stops meaning anything, the legend fully takes over. The myth becomes stronger than the truth. Eventually, it doesn't matter who's behind the mask. The story has outgrown the people who started it. And the cruelest part of all? Poor little Jason never killed anyone. He drowned as a child, and for decades afterwards, he's been blamed for the sins of his brothers, for a family tragedy that never healed. He never came back from the lake, he's dead. But he became the symbol, the undeserving villain of Crystal Lake's legendary death curse. So, this is just a fan theory, but to me it turns Friday the 13th from a messy franchise into something darker and sadder. A story about shame, secrecy, and violence passed down like an inheritance. Not a boy who wouldn't stay dead, but a name that wouldn't stop being used. And that feels far more terrifying than any resurrection. Because legends don't die. They just keep finding new faces. This has been Bad Moon Rising. And happy Friday the 13th.